Good afternoon and welcome to Enhancing the Digital Front Door Despite Today's Labor Shortage by Automating Repetitive Tasks, a Health System CIO Media Inc. production sponsored by Hyro. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Health System CIO, and I'll be your moderator today. We're looking forward to your participation. You can send in your questions or comments in the Q&A box, and we'll take them later in the program. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, we're going to go about 35-40 minutes with our main panel discussion featuring Joel Vengco, SVP and Chief Information and Digital Officer with Baystate Health, Nassar Nizami, EVP and Chief Information and Digital Officer with Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health, and Amber Fencl, VP Digital Health and Engagement with Novant Health, and Israel Crush, CEO at Hyro. So we're going to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about today. So Joel, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of your organization and your role?
Sure. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. And I want to thank my panel, my co-panelists also for their time today. So I'm as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Digital Officer here at Baystate Health. Baystate is a 5-hospital health system in Western Massachusetts. We have over 90 medical groups peppered around the western part of the region. We are the largest health system, by the way, in the western part of Massachusetts. We also have a commercial health plan that we own, about 250,000 members. We have a medical school that's now in its 5th year that is on campus and focused on population health and primary care. And we also have a technology innovation center called TechSpring, which I founded in 2015. And I'm just glad to be here. Thank you, Anthony, for the invite again.
Thanks, Joel. Nassar?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nassar Nizami. Thank you, Anthony, for having me on. I'm the Chief Information and Digital Officer at Jefferson Health. Prior to joining Jefferson, I was with New York Presbyterian, and before that, I was with Yale New Health. Jefferson Health is a 18-hospital, 2-campus university, and a health plan. We're about $9 billion in revenue, about 40,000 employees. We are the largest healthcare provider in the greater Philadelphia area. We serve Philadelphia and Southern Jersey. And again, thank you for having me.
Very good. Amber?
Hi there. My name is Amber Fencl. I am the Vice President of Digital Health and Engagement, as Anthony mentioned. I have the great opportunity of working at Novant Health, which is perhaps you'd call it a super regional in the Carolinas and Georgia. We have around 35,000 team members, about 15 facilities, 800 clinics, nearly 2,000 physicians. So we are a large presence in the Carolinas. My role particularly, I have the great pleasure of working with a brilliant group of individuals that are constantly innovating and improving our patient experience and our access to care through digital means. I have a clinical team that delivers 100% virtual care through a variety of different channels. And then I also have teams that lead our system-wide programs for digital healthcare through devices and through deviceless experiences as well. And we continue to look for ways with partners like Hyro to find operational lift, improved experiences that we can present to our patients and people in our community. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Thank you, Amber. Israel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Israel from Israel, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hyro. A much smaller organization. We are 55 people, both in Israel and New York and California. And our mission is to automate digital interactions in any conversational setting 24/7, so companies can communicate easily, convert more, and collect actionable insights along the way. In the past couple of years, focused very much on the healthcare industry, specifically on the provider side of the industry, helping them with their patient digital initiatives, digital front door initiatives, and patient journey initiatives.
Very good, Israel. Thank you. All right. Next question, Joel, we're going to start with you. How do you define the digital front door? What is your organization's objective for it? And talk about some of the projects you've done in this area.
Sure, thanks. So, you know, obviously it's without saying we typically in healthcare have the analog front door, the physical front door. And so for us, the digital front door is really, you know, one of a number of channels that we are beginning to really focus on to ensure that we've got, you know, engagement, other ways and means of engagement with our patients. We aspire to have a 24/7 access to, aspire to have our communities have 24/7 access to our health system. We believe that that's essential for us to continue to achieve our mission, which is caring for our communities every day. And so the digital front door is really the alternative to the traditional physical front door. And we see that in many different ways. So we see it as a part of our patient portal strategy, or we actually call it our patient engagement platform. We see the digital front door manifest itself on our website. We see the digital front door manifest itself on our app store and the apps that we actually provide to our patients so that they can engage with us. And engagement to us sort of on a multiple level of areas, which include things like, you know, accessing information, accessing answers to a problem or a question that they may have, accessing a provider, whether it's in real time or asynchronously. And so it's really a channel for us to provide to our communities to enable them to get access to us as they need and in the way that they need. Some of the ways that some of the projects that we've been focusing on with regards to the digital front door, most recently, of course, with COVID, are things like scheduling tests, COVID tests, lab tests, self-scheduling for primary care visits and/or virtual visits. And of course, things like preparing for elective procedures when we actually had elective procedures, although we're bringing those back online now, but given this fifth wave, we had to take those offline. But that's an interesting example where, you know, there's so much work to be done prepping for, let's say, a GI procedure, that oftentimes no-shows happen because, you know, the traditional means of sending folks, you know, paper instructions and making phone calls to them and missing them to help them prepare for what they need to not eat and what they need to take and what they need to pick up, and then all of these different instructions tends to be overwhelming. And so one digital front door capability is to provide them with a way to be able to see you know, sort of instructions for and sort of video help for preparing for you know, a GI visit or colonoscopy. So we see the digital front door as a way for us to extend our ability to engage with our patients and enables them to access that type of information engagement in the way that they want to and when they want to.
Very good, Nassar.
Great. So very much similar to what Joe mentioned, we see digital front door as a strategy to engage patients throughout their journey. We think about it from acquisitions of things like insurance eligibility and price estimation, pre-visit, when patients are trying to schedule, find a doctor, or, you know, just they have a question during visit, things like wayfinding or, you know, electronic whiteboards and such, and then post-visit, so education or payments and so forth. So it's a fairly comprehensive 24/7 on way for us to stay in touch with the patients. All of it ties back to our organizational objectives. So we think about digital front door strategy in terms of patient experience. We think about it from an improving quality. So when patients respond to questions and check in themselves, we have seen the error rate go down and quality improve. We also see it when patients are doing self-service. It's a better outcome and reduction in cost, better productivity and reduction in cost. So all the objectives for digital digital front door are tied to our organizational objectives. We are doing a number of things that most organizations are doing. I'll mention a few things that I thought were really exciting. So during COVID, this really took off. A number of features around scheduling, testing, resulting. We just had to switch on, turn on a dime, and which our teams did. We we leveraged our digital as a means to help those in need. Health equity is high on our list. We just recently turned on Spanish portal and mobile, and we are marching to with other languages. Just very recently, we went with allowing folks to check in, but even if they don't have an patient account, and so on and so forth. I think one of the exciting things that I'll mention that we went live with is voice activated commands in the patient room. So things like, hey, turn my lights off, or turn the blinds on, or can you lower the temperature? Patients in our rehab facility are all able to do it using voice command. If you think about patients in a rehab facility, these are some of the least mobile patients. It's a huge success with our patients. We are looking to expand it. Of course, we are working, we're hoping to start our work with Hyro to automate some of the intelligent conversational features, which we were able to implement with a different solution in the past. What we believe is really the future, and we're really excited to be working on it.
All right, very good. Amber?
I echo most all of what my co-panelists have shared so far. A slightly different maybe way to share the point of view from Novant Health is we are very intentional to survey and assess and embed ourselves within our communities so that we can truly understand what our community representatives, our patients, caregivers are desiring and wanting. Our research has shown us that self-service and 24/7 access is absolutely a priority. And for me personally, digital front door is meeting the patient exactly where they are, how they prefer, and on a channel that they choose. And so it's a variety of experiences that we must make available and stitch together a meaningful journey across the different digital platforms that Novant Health may offer, whether it is web or, to Joel's point, our patient portal, or any of our even digital devices that we may put into the hands of our patients to do remote patient monitoring. When I think about the insights and analytics that the technology that Hyro provides for us at Novant Health, we have a few different implementations and experiences from Hyro with their technology at the foundation that has allowed us to gain firsthand information and insights from our patients that are using those digital experiences. Particularly, the recent example I'll share is with our recent launch of Novant Health Now. It's a digital care platform that is allowing our patients to ask questions, to do research, to schedule appointments, to actually do a personalized filtering, searching for physician characteristics that are meaningful to them. And at the cornerstone of that platform is our virtual assistant that is delivered on Hyro's technology. And that conversational experience and the insights that those conversations and questions allow us to analyze really helps us shape the future, the next experience that we want to pursue at Novant Health. And I think that is part of the innovation and the ever-evolving digital transformation we're finding ourselves in healthcare, where these technologies a couple of years ago may not have been as in demand by the consumer or patients, and here we are now. It's expected,
right.
And so we have to meet that patient there.
Very good. All right, Israel, we're going to start with you on this one. What types of digital front door projects are especially challenging, and why? Should you always have the ability to escalate an inquiry to a human for a chat or a phone call? And are there some customer-facing workflows that are not suited to automation? Your thoughts?
It's a good one. So one of, I would say, the most challenging ones, especially in healthcare, is around scheduling and talking about the digital front door and the new patient expectations. So they want the same experience that they have with e-commerce, even in healthcare today. So they want to be able to schedule from anywhere on any time. So we talked about the omni-channel approach, about the 24/7. They definitely don't want to wait on the line for 10, 15 minutes, not say even more than that. And how do we create this type of scheduling experience in healthcare? And some of the challenges there is really around one, the deep integration to the EMR systems, to the electronic medical records, and around when we're talking about scheduling, that's a sensitive project, a sensitive process. So any consideration regarding privacy, HIPAA compliance, security as well. Do I think that we should provide the ability to escalate an inquiry to a human, whether via chat or voice? I can, again, get an example from a different industry. So when you go to the ATM and you try to withdraw money from your debit card, if it doesn't work, you don't have a human to escalate to. And back to healthcare, for the most simplistic task that we want to achieve, or the information that is quite constant, we don't want to be able to escalate to a human. That being said, if I just replaced my credit card or a debit card and I have an actual issue, then that's when I do want to do that. So it's really about the complexity of the task or the information that we want to get. Sometimes it's also not possible just due to operational constraints. And to the second question regarding other customer-facing workflows that are not suited to automation. So I think that the machines are very good at memorizing and organizing data, given that the engineers actually did a good job, right? So maybe a rule of thumb here is think about things that most people will agree on, a lot of facts that are in the world. So let's take COVID for example. When they just started, the CDC had a couple of guidelines and questions regarding COVID and how to maybe diagnose whether you need to go to the ER or just need to stay at home. So this is something, or a simple triage that you can do. If you think about like a very complex symptom checker, that's something that maybe even physicians won't agree what to do with the specific patients and where to send them in. So definitely you don't want to start with automation there. So I would say that the rule of thumb here is do things that are based more on knowledge and facts or business logic, and that most people will agree on.
Very good. Excellent. Nassar?
So I think, so slightly different angle, I guess, you know, in terms of the biggest challenge I think that we face, or at least at Jefferson I've seen, is just that there are too many apps for patients. There's too many solutions. So that's probably number one challenge whenever you think about a new initiative. You know, is it going to be a yet another app that patients will have to figure out how to navigate, right? There is a pretty significant adoption and training element, which is, I think, becoming more and more of an issue as we have these niche solutions for different, whether it's a disease or a hospital or wellness, it doesn't matter. There are just too many of healthcare apps. I think that's probably, I would say, the biggest thing that we face as a health system. Every specialty, every disease, every service line, apparently there is a solution. And how do you come up with an organizational strategy when you have, in some cases, vendors have their own very, I guess, contradicting and conflicting strategies? It's a challenge right now. I think ultimately it's probably going to be solved. That's first. Secondly, I think internally speaking, in terms of projects, we find that most difficult projects are when we are working with multiple internal systems or partner systems. So we have several joint ventures and partnerships, and often there is a desire to offer a seamless solutions to our patients, which is a great idea, and absolutely we should be working on, and we work on, but practicality of underlying systems being different, I think makes it very difficult to present a seamless solution to a patient. Okay, so the ability to escalate an inquiry, I think that healthcare is different. And absolutely, yes, there should always be a path for patients to contact a human being. It may not be real time. So it's not like, hey, here's a chat or here's a phone call. And if you click on this button, you're going to get a human. It doesn't have to be that. But there has to be a way, because you never know the urgency of the question. At times, very small, very insignificant questions start, but end up being significant. We, at least from a provider perspective, we deal with healthcare, and I feel very strongly there is always have to be a path to answer the question, even if it means that will lead to a human being. But today, look, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even today, most health systems, and certainly Jefferson, have a phone line. So why not just make it available? As much as we love automation, I think there has to be a path. And look, I think the last question on customer-facing workflows that are not suited for automation, I think Israel gave a great example on symptom checker. For a variety of reasons, there are workflows that are complicated. Anything that takes more than a few minutes is probably not a good self-service candidate. We have seen time and again that a few minutes in, patients get frustrated. I mean, think about our own experience. If we are on the phone for more than a few minutes, I get frustrated. So there are still workflows that are not suitable for automation, I think. And especially another point of view, I think that we ran into recently is more than, I think, workflows. Pieces of information. There are certain pieces of information like certain sensitive lab results. Think about digital front door. We want to make as much information as possible, but there are times when there are patients like underage patients, or there are results that may be sensitive, and you want to think about how much you want to automate and how real time do you want to be. There is no right answer to in some cases, but there's certainly a challenge that we faced, and certainly a discussion that I think all health systems need to have.
Very good, Amber.
I would like to reiterate the point about our inundation of healthcare apps. The number of point solutions that have come to the market are at times overwhelming. And it is easy to find a point solution to solve a problem. And if you aren't careful, you quickly will end up with a real estate of technology that is disconnected and not well stitched together. And that's where the breakdown, I think, can truly be impactful in a negative sense to those who are trying to utilize the technology and self-serve. And so I do find it challenging to navigate and drive a strategic view outside of the organization, particularly with our vendors, that we need to have a well thought out, stitched together journey before we make a decision and investment. Look for a partner with a vendor that is amiable to take that time and explore what the journey is that you wish to desire. And then that vendor that takes the time to do that, I suspect, will align with you on the experiences that you want. Your outcomes are going to be far better than if you solve one problem at a time. I'd also echo what Israel mentioned around look for automation to be introduced where there is a clear path. It can have a few branches, but if you think about implementing technology, a self-service experience for one of your specialty service lines, if you're part of a healthcare system where there are very nuanced and niche considerations and attributes between patient and physician that have to be considered for symptom checking or for physician matching, those become very difficult to do. And so I would say that is those are challenging. projects to take on, and without full investment from your clinical partners, that will be very difficult to do, because even as Israel said, even the clinicians may not agree on what the workflow should be. So to try and engineer it in a systematic fashion can be very challenging. The last point I want to make is just to reiterate that in healthcare, I do believe it is essential to have a pathway for human intervention. We at Novant Health are very focused on the human-centered aspect and our patients being at the very core, and their support networks being at the core of what we are designing. And if there is a desire to speak to a live person, there should be an option to allow them to transfer into that live person, whether it's a web chat. We have the ability through Hyro and an integration that allows us in our virtual assistant that if someone asks to speak to a live agent, we can transfer them to a live web agent, and they can continue that conversation with a person on the other end. We've had an implementation with Hyro that is a voice bot. And if there is the request to speak to an agent, which we did have them, about probably 20% of the calls that came in would ask to still speak with an agent. And we afforded that opportunity to redirect them to a live person. So, our actual implementations have validated that when a live person is requested, we should make that available to them. And so we have, and I think that is one of the nuances in healthcare that we should not lose sight of, is that human-centered aspect and where automation makes sense and where you just can't replace the human interaction.
Very good, Joel.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So, I think that if I was to look at your first question, I would sort of maybe focus on barriers, because I think my colleagues did a nice job talking about the challenging projects. I think barriers for folks to sort of look out for, the culture still is a big challenge always. Not that it can't be changed, but that's always, a tough hurdle to get over. Folks think that you're taking over my work. And so what am I going to do if you end up, creating a front door that I used to man, or, is it going to add more work to me? Who's going to be the one that's monitoring the front door? Is that going to be me? So I think the culture and change management are things that can be barriers, but not, things that can't be certainly solved for. And then the other, and I think, Amber sort of touched on it, is that, if you do this work, the digital front door work or any digital work, and it's seen as an IT project, it can be a big challenge and a big barrier, right? Get partnerships internally, externally, make it, because it is a business strategy. It's a business initiative, not an IT project. So I'd say that those are the things that I see as barriers or challenges. With regards to, a human at the end of, of that chain, I absolutely agree with my colleagues. Without a doubt, it has to be able to escalate to human. Healthcare is sensitive. It's fundamentally a human thing. And so ultimately, that has to lead to a human, and it may be an immediate, ripcord to a human. And those are the kinds of things that we have in our process, in our pathway. So we can automate certain things and create bots for many of the interactions, but we need to give the human side of the equation its due, because healthcare is about human. It's about human interaction. And it sort of, in many ways, is kind of an answer to your next question around, what can't be automated. And I think, Nassar, you pointed it out. I think anything human, is probably it's going to be something you need to think twice about if this is something that needs to be automated. I think of symptom checking as something that can be automated, but diagnosing and telling somebody their diagnosis is probably not something you want to automate. Having a bot tell somebody that they have cancer is probably not a good idea. Care coordination versus caregiving. maybe is another way of looking at what's human and what's not. I think coordinating care for like sort of what's the next best action, maybe something that could be automated. And we do some of that today with some of our technology where we're matching patients and providers. But we certainly don't, put a bot or an automated, icon in front of somebody or avatar in front of somebody that is giving them care. They wouldn't go for that. So, so human is key for sure.
All right, very good. Thank you, Joel. Next question, Amber, we're going to start with you. Talk about the challenge and importance of re-engineering inefficient workflows before automating them via the digital front door. I think this was alluded to before. If the actual workflow is disorganized, allowing patients to interact with it electronically will likely result in chaos. And how can IT folks tasked with setting up, automating certain things, work with the operational leaders to find out actually what they want to happen, what they think is happening, to make sure they're creating what's desired?
Thank you, Anthony. I have, I think, a unique perspective in the sense that I have been the IT person. I have sat in plenty of IT roles in healthcare and outside of healthcare. And in today's world, I sit in a business owner responsible for clinical services. So when I answer this, I'm wearing both hats and trying to provide an objective perspective, but unique. And I sincerely support and recommend the investment in pre-planning and design sessions, journey mapping, design intensive activities, and that early onset of an initiative that is inclusive of the actors that are part of this proposed project. And your clinical partners, your informaticists, and certainly your engineers should be at the table. But I highly recommend having a subject matter expert in experience design and journey mapping concepts and helping facilitate thinking through how that workflow would truly come to life from a patient perspective and also from the clinical perspective. And I think if you take the time to do that up front, you'll identify those points of friction that you would not have found until you were in implementation too far down the path and build or test. And your success will be negatively impacted. So to avoid the chaos, certainly take that time to plan and to map a full comprehensive journey. And I think the subsequent benefit of that is, to Joel's point earlier, is organizational alignment and culture. If you have all of those parties that will be part of the workflow ultimately represented in the room at the very beginning and designing that workflow, then you have began to build the foundation and the buy-in for what that new experience, that new process that's re-engineered is going to be. And with that buy-in, you will be far better positioned for adoption and success when you are ready to move that into production. So please remember that those clinical partners, they extend beyond just your physicians group and your advanced practitioners. It's going to be your clinic administrators. It's going to be some of your office staff. There is a heavy burden on our nurses today, given the shortages that we are facing. So those are the variety of clinical roles too that I think need to be considered when you are doing that design work up front.
Excellent. Thank you, Amber. Joel?
Yeah, I echo what Amber had mentioned in her statements, particularly the players that need to be a part of it. So I'll frame for you kind of the way that we look at it, our structure, but prefaced with the fact that I think what Amber talked about with regards to journey mapping and human-centered design, I think those are important key components of it. And by the way, I love this question because I think calling it digital is it still has the same potential pitfalls of paving cow paths, right? It's like, Back then we were trying to digitize and implement technologies, but if you didn't work on the workflows and the old traditional operating models, you could pave those cow paths and it won't make anything more efficient. So we look at it in three sort of with sort of a framework of three layers. The first is, what's the outcome or the experience we're looking to achieve, and then from there we look at the operations that we have in place today that would achieve those experiences or outcomes. And oftentimes what we'll find is that the experience or the outcome that we're looking for is not able to be supported by the current operations. It actually creates a different experience, a different outcome. So by that nature and looking at it from that perspective, it really forces your operating partners, your business partners to really identify what are the things that we're doing today that we need to change to be able to achieve those new outcomes, those new experiences. And only then can we start to talk about what digital capabilities we would want to have support those new operations, instantiate those new operational capabilities so that they can be scaled, so that whole sort of process can be scaled. And with that framework, it really brings in more than just IT folks. It brings in, the business partners. It brings in the marketing folks. It brings in finance, and the accountability across those different domains elevates, and they get more embedded into the development of the solution, because now they know what they need to change or what they need to support in order for us to achieve an aligned outcome and or experience that we've all bought into.
Very good. Nassar?
I think I agree with everything that Joel and Amber said. I just say that this is probably the single most complicated issue that our teams deal with. And one of the things I'm incredibly proud of is that IT at Jefferson, and I think it's true for most organizations, but certainly at Jefferson, is one organization that understands the processes of the entire organization, whether it's nursing, cardiology, revenue cycle, you name it. We have someone in IT that understands the processes. And often our job as IT team members is to simplify and help them processes. So I have in our team, we have folks who understand human factor engineering, folks who understand lean processes, experts in UI and UX. And the reason we have these individuals is when we think about implementing an IT system, often the processes that we are trying to automate are antiquated, complex, very difficult to follow. And when you automate a very difficult, complicated, broken processes, you result in just magnifying whatever the underlying problems are pretty significantly. So imagine automating simple tasks like checking a website. So a human doing 7 or 8 clicks, you can automate it and turn it into thousands and thousands of clicks. That's just a simple example, but I think highlights how important it is to address the underlying process before you try to automate or solve the problem. And same thing is true for digital front door. I'll give you another quick example of online scheduling where we had this debate at Jefferson about should we allow online scheduling to all patients or not? And the underlying issue was that what if it results in wasted time for providers? So patients scheduling time with providers where it's not really needed, right? And of course, the first iteration was a very complicated set of criteria, which simply patients were not willing to go through. Because as I said earlier, if it takes more than a few minutes or it takes more than a handful of steps, patients are going to get frustrated. So that we scratched that. Second thing that we implemented was, all right, let patient just schedule, and on the back end, we will have people who are going to just check every request or most of the requests that come in with limited success. And now what I'm going to call 3 is an efficient decision tree process where we're implementing decision trees that are streamlined, that are very simple, and based on a few questions where patients can navigate to who or what especially they should be scheduling. So just one example of how, you just cannot put a technology. If you put a technology on a broken process, you're just going to magnify the broken processes. And IT has been, I think, for a long time, one of the areas that have helped organizations in general re-engineer and improve processes.
Very good, Israel. Anything you want to jump in with there?
Maybe just to emphasize on what has been said here around aligning on outcomes with all the relevant stakeholders. Another thing that we tend to do is aim big, but start small. So taking it in baby steps. We talk about getting into the least resistant path. So maybe use cases that are less around sensitive information, but more public-facing information, and then move from there. And if I take it to the more tech-related question, at least for me, of how to re-engineer these inefficient workflows, what we saw working with a bunch of partners is that there's a lot of data cleaning to be made. This is when dealing with digital front door initiatives. I don't want to say the first time, but it's evident that the organization learns about a lot about their data and the cleaning that they need to do with their data. So one consideration I would say that is important is to make sure that you can operate at speed, not only for the deployment after you aligned on the outcomes, but actually on the iterations themselves. So you have a lot of unknowns and you need to be prepared for that. And mostly you need to be prepared to work with a partner that you're aligned on the outcome, but that can also iterate very quickly.
All right, very good. We're going to go to our Ask a Co-Panelist feature segment, my favorite. Israel, we're going to let you go first. You have a question for one or more of your co-panelists. You can direct it at someone specifically or to everyone, however you want to do that.
Sure. So I'll just choose Nassar. We talked a lot about different challenges when thinking about the digital front door. I wonder regarding additional challenges or considerations for healthcare networks that actually merged with a bunch of other networks, most recently with Einstein. How do you think about these initiatives when you think about the various data sources or the various systems that you need to integrate together? Actually, it's also relevant for Novant, so you can take
okay.
That's a great...
Nassar, why don't you go first?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because like M&A activity is not going to slow down in our industry anytime soon. So, you know, and every time you acquire, whether it's a small practice or a large health system, there is this issue of how do you provide your now customers, new patients, a unified, streamlined process, because the expectations change, right? And we are in the same boat, as you mentioned, with our acquisition of Einstein. So look, there has to be a way, and that we are working on ways to solve or tie the, I guess, you know, solutions in the back end. So that the trick here truly is to make it as seamless as possible for the patients and do the hard work of integration in the back end. Like in an ideal world, the entire country and entire world would be on one set of systems and we would never have any issues of different systems. But that's not the world we live in. There always be multiple EMRs, and even when you don't acquire, I think we are in partnerships, and in the region, we partner with a number of other organizations where data exchange on both on the back end and on the front end. So for us as health systems and from a patient perspective is very important. So how do we provide that unified, even though when we are not one system? So I think your question is more than just acquisition. I think it is ways to think about, we are now a pair, and how do we, Jefferson, provide a unified space to our patients from a fairly comprehensive 360 perspective. I don't think that there are any perfect answers out there, but this is something that we are very interested in solving, and I think we are taking small bites out of it, but it is still an industry problem.
Amber?
I concur. It is a tough nut to crack. It is challenging. It's a big, complex problem. If you are a system that is in that pathway of M&A, I would advise you, if you haven't or are in progress, to truly invest in a modern data architecture and prepare yourself for those sorts of integrations that are inevitable and expected. And not to reiterate what Nassar said, I think what I would complement his points with is, as you are technically figuring out how to solve that problem, There is a multidisciplinary group of representatives on both of those systems that need to be at play. And it's a close crosswalk with your marketing partners and your communications partners that as you figure out, you're going to announce and you're going to have public media around any sort of M&A activity that is memorialized, and that will happen far faster than any solutioning and integration work can. And so having very strong communication and marketing plans to assist your communities that are impacted in that journey and overly communicate and multiple channels to communicate and really think about too, what is the long-term vision to have as an integrated experience? And it could vary, it could be different depending on your situation, but it comes back to that point of having a vision that you are aligned to early on that will shape your communications. And that will also shape certainly your technical designs and solutioning that's there to come and prepare for a very large investment and a body of work in a span of time where you'll have all hands on deck to do that challenging work should you decide to do full integration or even partial integration.
Joel, anything you want to jump in with there?
No, I think my panelists stated all the things that I would have said. Thank you.
All right, very good.
Do I get to ask a question?
Yeah, let's kick it over to you, Joel. Sure, you got a question for one or more of your co-panelists.
I do actually for both, but I'm going to start with Amber. You know, Amber, I love your title, Digital Health and Engagement. I think it speaks to kind of where we are as a health system or a health industry, rather. We're trying to get more towards digital, obviously. But that also speaks, I think, to the breaking of traditional structures and traditional roles. I would love to hear from you in terms of, you know, how your organization is structured. What are some unique, maybe roles or jobs under your structure? Because you know, the old tradition of health IT before we got into this realm of digital was, you know, you got folks that are doing internal apps, EHR, if you will. There's the CTO doing infrastructure stuff. There's a service arm, and that was pretty much the standard, right? But there are so many other things that are going on now, and I think we each have very interesting and unique structures and roles. Would love to hear some interesting things that are underneath your oversight, and then also for you, Nassar, as you see your sort of larger IT organization.
Yeah, happy to share. It has been an evolution. So digital health and engagement, it is a business unit that is sitting within the typical, as you may call it, technology organization, but we're a business unit that's sitting within that organization. And we were previously part of our medical group. So this team actually sat inside of the Novant Health Medical Group at inception. And there was a very intentional decision made to lift the team out and remove some of those traditional constraints that may exist in brick and mortar experiences and providing of care, and move the team into an organization where innovation and the culture of curiosity for how we may think outside the box to deliver a traditional service could be fostered and nurtured. And so that was one distinct organizational change that was made. We still adhere to the same safety, quality, compliance metrics that our medical group does, and certainly have close ties and dotted lines into that team. But we actually have one arm of my group that is, we call them digital care delivery. And that is a team of individuals of practicing clinicians with a medical director at the helm that are delivering care on demand. So you can have an urgent care virtual visit by accessing that team through our website or even through our patient portal, MyChart or My Novant. And that team also supports the digital health, the telehealth experiences for the broader medical group. So not only does that team deliver clinical services themselves 24/7, they also support the rest of the medical group as they embrace and evolve their own telehealth offerings within the individual clinics. We also find ourselves frequently offering additional support to our medical group. For example, if we have critical labs that need to be reviewed in the middle of the night, instead of waking up the physician who is having a nice night's sleep, we have a team of advanced practitioners who can receive those labs and review those results and actually make the qualified decision of what to do next. And so those are ways that we have provided extended clinical services to our medical group. Mental health referrals are made to our team as well, where the scenario and the patient situation makes sense. So that's one aspect. And then the other part that's just really fun is the part of my team that gets to bring new emerging technologies forward for the system. So we do a lot of vetting, a lot of research. We work closely with our innovation lab, who does much of our scouting for that really bleeding edge type of opportunity that's out there. And then as it begins to grow over a little bit of legs, or maybe it's a little more in the leading edge space, where we have clinicians who are ready to pilot or try something new, whether it's a new device. It could be augmented reality or something ocular based. It may be remote patient monitoring and a solution for bariatrics, for example. Those are the types of other projects that has a technical aspect to it that is closely partnered with our medical group to bring it to life. So hopefully, Joel, that gives you a little bit of insight. And just one last point on that. On the team, there is a foundational layer for engagement where we actually have a community voice team with a panel of about 6,000 community members who have enrolled and said, hey, we'll participate in surveys that you send digitally to us to vet new ideas, to get a pulse check on how they may feel about a concept, or, we have some market data that tells us a new idea may be something we would want to pursue. We will use community voice to actually reach individuals and seek their input, and then use that data to help inform us on decisions that we make.
Very good. Nassar, is there anything you want to add there?
Briefly, I think I agree with everything Amber said. I'm a big believer that IT is not separate than business. IT is the business. Our mission at Jefferson is to improve life. That is our mission. And we are working to really solve that. I am also, and this, I would say this, like there is no one answer. There are many different answers on organization and structure, etc. It depends from organization to organization. It also depends on where the organization is in their maturity. At Jefferson, where we are right now, we are aligning different functions under one team. One of the things that we struggled with is creating a separate innovation team, that really brings some questions, which is, hey, so rest of the teams, are they not innovative? And we struggled with having one team or one group impression, at least, that one team or one group is working on a more, I guess, cool, innovative things, and other teams are not working on cool, innovative things. So we've tried to change that, and I think I'd like to see, and I believe that our entire team is very innovative. I think we absolutely believe that if there is not stability, there is not firm investment in some of the basic functions, it's very difficult to innovate, transform, or optimize on a shaky, non-standard, non-stable system. So our approach in the last couple of years have been to have one team delivering on innovation, digital, and also responsible for what our traditional IS&T functions. So let's stop there.
All right, we've got time for sort of what I'll call a lightning round of last thoughts, final bit of advice for your colleagues on the line struggling with that digital front door, wanting to automate some of those tasks that they think they can automate, make it a little more streamlined for people. So let's go through it. Joel, your final word.
It's not about technology out of the gate. It's really about business transformation, and that it means that you have to bring the culture along. You have to have deep and great partnerships, and those are difficult to address. But that's the first hurdle. Once you get there and there's alignment, then it's sort of the field is green, and then I think you start to address the things that you are looking to address, which at the core is making sure that you give your consumers and your patients what they need to stay healthy.
Excellent. Nassar?
We are living in exciting times. This digital transformation has been accelerated due to COVID. COVID was just horrible things happened during COVID, but one of the good things coming out was that just adoption of technology and just the scale that digital health got was just remarkable. And I absolutely believe that this will be a decade of digital health. That really excites me. And I think we're on a journey that's really exciting. IT, technology, people like us are going to play an important role. And in many ways, we'll be leading the organization. So I think we are very excited about next 5-10 years.
Excellent. Amber?
Thank you. I would leave the team with the thought, I believe that there are tons of good ideas out there every day, but not every good idea can be implemented. And to be very intentional and selective on the ideas that you want to bring forward and bring to life, and look for the ideas that align to the priorities of your marketing partners, of your clinical partners, and certainly tree up to your strategic priorities for the organization. So if you have initiatives that are a priority and programs that are a priority system-wide, identify those ideas and those opportunities that are digital in nature that can be a force multiplier and truly create some sort of expanded experience that may not have been thought of in its traditional sense initially. But if you look for a way to digitize or create a complement experience to a core priority for the system, then I think you can have great success. But be selective in what you choose to do and what you choose to invest your resources in. The resources are limited. Your clinical partners are stretched very thin. So be selective.
Excellent. Thank you. Israel, we'll give you the last word.
Thank you. So I said it already, aim big, start small. By aiming big, carefully choose the partners that you're going to work with. Make sure that they're not another app in this ocean of apps, that they can actually support you in various use cases on various channels, and then start small, go at the least resistant path, and have some quick wins for actual needs, and go from there for the more complex scenarios.
Excellent. Well, that's about all we had time for today regarding continuing education. You can use the final slide in this deck. You'll receive an email when the recording of this event is ready for viewing. If you want to sponsor an event with us, you can reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team, or go to our website to register for upcoming webinars. With that, I want to thank our tremendous panel, Joel Vengco, Nassar Nizami, Amber Fencl, and Israel Crush. I want to thank Hyro for sponsoring and our attendees for once again joining. And with that, everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Great day.